Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a privilege to stand in front of you and speak to you for 15 minutes on operational excellence. Thank you, Sengupta sir, for chairing this session. Pardon me, I have a bad throat. There may be some disturbances from my side also. I start the presentation on delivering operational excellence in oil and gas industry. I'd like to give an overview of what operational excellence in oil and gas industry means. As you already heard from Mr. Maitra was speaking about operational excellence and operational innovation. We have certain frameworks developed within PwC to talk about operational excellence from strategy to execution limit. Brief 2-3 minutes on dynamics of oil and gas industry, as you all aware of it. The oil and gas sector is emerging from a turbulent period to face an array of short-term, long-term challenges. Diversification within oil and gas industry is taking place. We see a lot of investments taking place in non-energy sector also. Short-term volatility is taking a toll on oil and gas companies from upstream to downstream, looking into inward view of improving certain processes, people and technology investments done so far, with an area of digitization or automating the existing operational processes with help of operational technology. Companies are looking inward into the processes and see how those processes can be relooked into, strategy can be relooked into. I have a couple of examples based on the experiences that we foresee, whether it's an US oil and gas company to Indian. We'll throw you some examples as we go ahead with the presentation. It's all aware of this slide that there are high oil prices encourages increased investments in high risk profile projects, leading to operational efficiency and productivity is the theme for since 2018 onwards. So oil prices, we saw there are certain two major events happened since 2008 onwards. Dipped down, again went up for 3-4 years, took a toll from 2014. So people or companies are now cautious about how to take care of if there is a next trough coming in 2023-24 onwards. So how to take care of that kind of eventuality and how we can prepare ourselves both from strategy to execution perspective. Need to gear up certain investments, relook into certain people investment and technology investments. So we have done a quick survey around oil and gas operational technology area, excellence area, and we see BP talking about, when they talk about digitization or when they talk about operational excellence, the first thing which comes to their mind is to how to automate or how to innovate, how to see their processes, people who are working from low level to the level CXO level, how they can improve certain ways of working of certain processes. Shell also talks about, let's say, their first one of the when we had an interview with Mr. Ben, he's talked about their asset strategy is one of the key levers to improve operational excellence. But asset strategy without help of technology investment is nothing. It's just a pen and paper. So he mentioned about certain digitization, like digital asset management, which is making waves within the asset integrity space, is where they are looking into making investments around. We talked about certain digitization. We heard this kind of resonance from CIO of ENI, also in terms of making huge investments, whether they have their field in Gabon or Southeast Africa to their fields in Europe. Getting more deep dive into what operational excellence in oil and gas industry talks about. So this is our very high level framework of or areas where we think operational excellence should be centered around. We talk about operations core improvement. When you talk about core improvement, it talks about looking into inward processes from L1 to L5 processes. Certain examples, we saw companies which are mature enough, they tend to look into certain L3, L4 processes and see what kind of roles, responsibilities, delegation being assigned to people, relook into that, see how certain authorities can be mapped more with those people so that people take decision at lower levels of the organization. So it is, when we talk about operational excellence, it's not about just the operation, it's looking into from the strategy onwards to the execution. Strategic core competence, when we talk about workforce planning. You may be hearing about a term called strategic workforce planning across oil and gas companies, and it has made real waves within Indian diaspora of the oil and gas industry. When in 2017 or 2016 end, there was an HR task force created to look into oil public sectors and private sectors, see how the HR competencies. When you talk about HR, it doesn't look into the HR department. It looks around, let's say, 30,000 people of an oil and gas PSU. So how those skills, competencies can be relooked into, is there some new projects coming up in next 10 years, or is a BS6 upgradation coming up? So how do I handle my people to take care of certain project management activities? Oil and gas companies in India, we see a lot of in making investments in petrochemicals, whether it's ONGC with OPAL or BPCL with certain petrochemical foray, or HPCL, IOCL already had. So at this present, there are around 8 to 9 petrochemical opportunities coming up. And in that space, how do I see my present workforce of whether it's an upstream or a refining or any other business unit can take care of certain areas of additional responsibility of skill building, competency development. Technical competency framework is what people are looking into. Asset optimization and integrity, we have a lot of speakers. My next speaker will speak about on this particular topic. And as we go forward within this one-day session, we will hear a lot of speakers speaking on asset integrity and optimization. Supply chain management, this is an area where we have to look into, suppose if you are a refining or a petrochemical, you really look into the market, improving your marketing and retail processes. So operational technology investments are being made into retail and marketing processes to improve the supply chain. It doesn't only include the products being out from the refinery. It looks into, let's say, if you have a supply and planning function within your refinery or a petrochemical, how to improve your margins. Margin improvement frameworks are being carried out or they're being rolled out across oil and gas companies to improve the supply chain planning function. Fifth area is the people and process safety. We have a session around that on process safety. I will briefly touch upon certain elements of where we think oil and gas process safety companies should look into. And last but not the least, which is the most happening area, is automation of present operational processes with investments on operational technology and digitization on certain processes or certain investments made through certain phenomena or certain hypothesis or certain philosophy like Industry 4.0, machine learning, etc., etc. Going deep dive into area one, one by one, I will spend 1 or 2 minutes on it. Operational core improvement, it talks about looking into your processes, redefining your roles. Last week we have been associated with a US chemical and downstream company, which it's one of the leading company which provides or manufactures chemicals for treatment of waters. Like you have processed waters in cooling towers and all those areas. And that company is well established in India. It goes to Indian Oil, BPCL, HPCL, providing those chemicals. That company had invested a lot of in terms of process development. They have implemented RCM for rotary, RBI for static. Their strategy is excellently fine, but they called us to hold us and relook into their certain maintenance and repair strategy, which is going back to some of the basics before you do investment in RCM and RBI. So what is them basically driving them to go back and see, yes, I have made an investment of RCM, RBI 5 years down the line, and I need to relook into my MR strategy now. So basically rejigging the certain blocks of the maintenance of the asset integrity function, roles, head of the departments, the team composition, looking into certain L1 to L5 processes, automating, integrating some L5 level processes, and see how technology can help them integrating the overall framework of MR strategy. So that's why they are looking into certain areas. Typical processes, as you are all aware of it, certain processes, whereas these are some issues in upstream and downstream. Strategic competency areas, it's all talking about workforce planning. As my previous speaker, Mr. Joshi, touched upon workforce planning from the IoT and the digital space. I'd like to talk about more on the holistic view when we have, how do we cater to certain workforce which we don't have as now? Don't we cater to certain skills or competencies which we don't have? So if we want to invest in electric vehicle, and investments are being made, dictate from MOPNG to reduce 10% independent, 10% reduction in import dependence, how does that translate to oil and gas companies investing in some other non-oil and gas areas? So if you want to invest in electric vehicle, is your people competent enough? Do you have a strategy? Do you have certain skills which you need? Do you have that, at least the pen and paper? Yes, I need these kind of skills. Area is one of the, let's say there is a CGT 10th round happening, 9th round we saw some 83 GAs going into investments. So companies which invested, fortunate enough to be part of that kind of investments, now they are looking into, let's say I have 13 GAs which are rolled across all east, west, north, south India. Do I have the necessity CGD people? Or how, if I'm in a petrochemical or a refinery, I want to make a partnership with a certain CGD company and make inroads into, or do some handholding in terms of skill building. So it talks about how you want to strategically position yourself into next generation investments that you plan to do. Optimization of assets is the center of everything. If you talk about design integrity, mechanical integrity, or process integrity, or maintenance integrity, it revolves around the optimization of asset. How do you want to have a good maintenance strategy? How do you want to have investment or relook into the investment, whether you have implemented Maximo or any other Meridian, look into that product and see how those processes which you have done investment 10 years back are generating return on investment on certain investment. So it is to get certain assets sweat, certain assets, certain investments which you have made, look into those investments and see how return on investments can be obtained. So there is a one simplistic example. Let's say if you have assets, let's say a heat exchanger or a pump, the book value of the pump will show in SAP, let's say 30% depreciation, but the mechanical or the process engineer who is operating in that pump knows that the pump is in a good condition. As per books, the pump is declared as a scrap value. So how do you get the data from the people who are working and the process data which is integrated through operational systems to say that yes, the pump is working in a working condition? It can be stretched another 1 or 2 years down the line. still it declared as a scrap from the both from the OT perspective and also from the IT perspective. So it is to identify certain processes where you can at least see those pumps is in workable condition, and the people or the operator or the people or the shift engineer who are working or taking care of the pump are in good condition. Also, okay. So quickly, so maintenance is an operational. So I'll quickly. This is where our overall maintenance strategy, and if it's not necessary that company has to look into the 15 elements of the maintenance and repair or the asset strategy. Company can look into certain, let's say, spare part management strategy and go deep dive into identifying how it can improve the spare part management and processes. Supply chain. As we know, there are certain coordination in terms of planning, scheduling, blending function required within the supply chain function of within the refinery. And if the products are going out, if they're polymers or the refined products are going out from the factory premises, so certain necessary or certain KPIs, matrices are required to improve the supply chain processes outside the battery limit. So, knowing what refineries you have and where to progress, this is a compass where we talk about when we do supply chain operational strategy, we talk about these 5 areas. One is the inventory, then the price exposure, the gross and net margin. Operationally, how are you faring, whether it's a local competition, local optimization, how do you include those local optimization in pockets and integrate it, and proactively managing different third parties to manage optionality and marginality. Let's talk about the supply chain framework. Process safeties, we have people process safety, certain areas where we talk about when we look into process safety, auditing, incident investigation. We do a lot of benchmarking exercises in process safety. I mean, ministries encouraging oil and gas companies to do a lot of PSM related benchmarking studies. When we talk about safety, it has to be from the design stage, how we include safety as one of the key element in terms of and see how technologies. So there are a lot of newer technology in safety softwares which are coming up. Companies are investing into it so as to see that it doesn't remain on only on people dependence. It has to be also on the technology dependence. So this is how we have seen when we do a safety survey of different companies, where the people are and what kind of culture people has to have in mind in terms of whether it's, you can see some of the clear logos, BP, Shell, Chevron, etc., Conoco, doing how are they faring in safety. These are some of the elements when we do PSM benchmarking in Indian diaspora within the safety. We do take care of certain elements and why it's benchmarking required. Digital technologies, we have a lot of sessions on digital technology. So, but we see certain key digital technologies starting from big data, cloud analytics, IoT, robotics, wearable technology. So, and in fact, presently we are associated with a large Eastern company like GAIL. So it's a Trans-Anatolian pipeline company which is implementing an operational technology center in influencing, taking care of a lot of digital automation technology. It has some 5,600 kilometers of pipeline starting across the Mediterranean. So we are doing certain projects around that. Digitization impacting efficiency, how does it impact? We paucity of time, the slides are with you. I'm available till lunch. I can have a discussion with you going forward. Conclusion, how to make sustainable companies. Asset optimization, digitization, and having a safety culture is the 3 key elements, coupled with what we talked about in terms of strategic workforce planning and looking into in your core processes. Without that, nothing is possible. So I leave this presentation. So any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.